Hey there, Nigerian ExJw speaks. Hope everyone is doing well. We're going to come off the heavy subject from last week and get back to some ExJw stuff. But yes, I had to get that off my chest last week, and I'm still making comments here and there, but not here. How's everyone doing? I hope you are having a good enough week considering everything wherever you're at. If you're having the protests as well and everything, I hope whatever you're doing, you're staying safe and looking after yourself. So today, what I want to talk about is share some resources for witnesses who are in the process of leaving or just left. Now, a lot of this is stuff that I personally used or have had or heard really good things about. This is by no means an exhaustive list. It doesn't mean that it's going to be right for everyone, but these were some of the things that I was listening to, reading at the point that I was making my way out. And a lot of them I still sort of refer to or look at. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is not necessarily a tool. It's more of a mindset. So at the point when I started to look into it, if you haven't gone through my story of how I left, I will put a link to that video somewhere. When I left, I wasn't trying to leave. I was fed up with the internal conflict of, are the witnesses right, or is this mainstream church that I'd joined, were they right? So I'd been in that conflict for a few years at that point, and I was trying to resolve it because it was having real life impact, not just in the confusion, but also in the relationship with my family. And I needed to figure out what was true. And that's why I went down that path to actually look at, okay, what teachings of who are the witnesses really? Who are they and where have they come from? And I can't tell you sort of where I stumbled upon the first bit of information. I don't think I went out, typing in Google for information. I can't tell you how it came about. It was around the same time that I was looking into veganism as well. So make of that what you will. And so it was definitely a time of research for me. I remember just that feeling of wanting to be home, reading up stuff all the time. I would, lift my head up just long enough to do my job and get my son to and from school. As soon as he went to bed, I was back on it. During the weekends, that was mostly what I was doing. And I think the mindset thing that I was going to talk about is to assess everything fairly. Give everything a fair assessment. Do not, what's the word I'm looking for? No special pleading. Nothing should be above criticism. If your goal is truth, if your goal is finding out what is right, then nothing gets a pass without proving itself. Don't just accept anything just because it says so. Apply the same amount of scrutiny to everything and see where you end up, because I believe if something is true, it will stand up to scrutiny, and it will bear itself out in terms of evidence. So the first thing is more of a mindset thing. Go in with an open mind. Go in with your goal being the truth. You are following the truth. Nothing is getting a special pass. Nothing's just going to slip through the net just because it says it's this, including the Bible. Yes, including the Bible. It doesn't get a special pass because it says it's the word of God. Scrutinize it like you would everything. The second thing I'm just going to say as well, now I have come out of the process identifying as an atheist, agnostic atheist, whatever you want to call it, essentially being I'm not convinced in the existence of a God as is described, in general. Does that mean I'm saying there's no chance that there could possibly be one? Of course I can't say that, but I'm not convinced of the existence of the gods that have been described. So you don't have to come to that conclusion yourself. I feel like that's a given, but I should say it. You don't have to come to that conclusion. You have to make up your own mind. People can believe whatever they choose to believe as long as it makes sense to them. The only time I have an issue is when their beliefs are actively hurting someone else, then we have a problem. So just wanted to say that. Okay, so some of the things I looked at. Let's start with where we're at. So if you're watching this, you're probably watching it on YouTube. So YouTube was a place that I spent a lot of time on. Some of these people you'll be familiar with, and if you're not, check them out if you feel like it. So start with a very popular one. So there's the John Cedars channel, which for witnesses, most of us know it. He has an approach of really digging in, a real scholarly approach. Yes, he ended up an atheist as well, but in those early days, just getting into that process of asking questions, asking real questions, really thinking about it, I found his videos very helpful. So if for some crazy reason you're watching my video and you've not been on his channel, I don't know how that happened, but yeah, he is one that continues to do a lot of research, make videos, ask questions, and I think what I really like, it comes across in a compassionate way as well, sharing the same approach of you can end up with whatever conclusion you want to make, but ask the questions. So that's the first one. One that is sort of in a similar vein is the ExJw critical thinker. So this is a couple from America. They are fantastic. They've commented on a few of my videos as well, which I was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe it. Again, as you can tell from the name, they're all about critical thinking. They've got a bit of humor there as well. I love their humor. I love when they do skits. They used to be Bethelites, and so they have that sort of inside view of what it's like on the other end. So for most of us who didn't get a chance to go to Bethel, that's like the holy grail, and you get to hear from the inside, what things were like on the back end. So that's another channel I'll say definitely check out for some research. Staying on YouTube, there's a channel called Stop the Shunning. She doesn't make videos anymore, but she has a collection of videos. I think her name's Beth, and she comes at it from a compassionate psychologist side of things, so it feels quite caring. Yes, it's still encouraging you to think, but there's a lot of, I feel when I think about her channel, I think about self-care and just looking after yourself. There's questioning, she talks about her reasons why, but I just remember watching a lot of her videos as well, and she has a good collection on there. Going from the care serious to the silly side of things, there is Brigette Pfister. I might actually try and put the names of these channels in the description. I might do that. So Brigette Pfister is funny. She makes me laugh. I love her sense of humor, the way she thinks about things. So she has I think one of her popular series is where she dissects the kingdom songs and actually look at what the words mean, which when we're singing it, a lot of the times we're not thinking about it. We're just hearing the melody, which I know what she says. I used to love the melodies. Music is my thing. Music is life itself for me, and so I have good memories of the music. That was one of the things that I bonded with my mom over, and I kind of miss that. But I have memories of growing up in Nigeria under the moonlit night, and sitting outside in front of our corner shop and just singing with some lanterns, yes, the picture. So yeah, so I have good memories of the song, but when you're singing it, well, I certainly wasn't thinking about the words, and so just sort of dissecting that, and yeah, interesting. So, and she also has the Sex and the Watchtower series. Hilarious. So if you want a bit of humor, you want a bit of laughing, I would say Brigette Pfister. Now this next YouTube channel, this is not our next witness. This is a channel called Hannah and Jake. It used to be called Hugo and Jake, but it's called Hannah and Jake. And their particular series that I listened to was the the Bible Reloaded. Now, if you are squeamish about swearing, then maybe that's not the one for you. But if you don't mind a bit of swearing, personally, I try not to swear openly myself, but I don't mind those kind of jokes. Sort of someone else saying it from afar. But yeah, I do have a weird sense of humor. So they have their Bible Reloaded series where they basically go through the Bible starting from the beginning and looking at it in a open, irreverent way, and just looking at the book for what it was without any assumptions that it's the word of a God, and just actually reading it and analyzing it the way you would any book. And I found that very interesting. A lot of the stuff that perhaps we would have glossed over, or while we're reading it already coming up with excuses for it, when all that's stripped away and you're just reading it as a book, I think you can get a lot of insight from that. And I think that is a good way to approach it if your goal is getting truth. So Hannah and Jake, definitely one for that I certainly enjoyed listening to. They also have a series on the Quran as well, because that was another one that I listened to. Basically, reading the Quran and looking at it as a book for what it was. Yeah, so that was interesting. Okay, sort of along the same lines as well, what I would say, there are, if you are at the point where you're questioning, but you can't quite bring yourself to question the witnesses, I would say maybe look for some content that is talking about other religions that have a similar sort of setup, similar reputation. So one that comes to mind for me perhaps is the Mormons. And when you listen to content about the Mormons, their beliefs, and you find yourself judging, ooh, that sounds crazy, and you can see the flaws in it, perhaps you can also see the similarities with what you already have, and perhaps you can question things in that way. So that was just a little something to throw in there. In terms of the YouTube channels, I spent too much on that. I have to add this one. Theramin Trees, if I'm saying that right. Theramin Trees, I don't know the person's actual name, but they make videos on critical thinking, narcissistic thought control kind of groups, and sort of behavior patterns, and really looking at it from a psychology point of view. I think the person who runs that channel actually works within psychology, so he brings that his background into the videos that he makes, and I find them really useful because you can really get into the minds of what it takes for a person to be in a group like the Witnesses, the sort of programming that goes into that. He does have a couple of videos related to the Witnesses specifically, but most of them sort of from general Christianity, his own experience as well, growing up in a religion, and his mother, who sounds like an interesting character. I'm going to leave it there. And I find that really useful for getting to the process of thinking. Okay, so I'm going to leave it there for YouTube. Clearly see where I spend a lot of time. Websites, I only have two on that list. There's JW Facts. I think this is run by Paul Grundy, could be wrong. It's a real wealth of information for things that you're not going to find on jw.org that are absolutely true. So I think that's a really good resource to dig out information, read information, and see what it says. There's also JW Survey, which is run by John Cedars as well. So that was the first YouTube channel that I talked about. So that again is another resource for reading stuff. A lot of the things they are referenced. I would say if you have access to some of the older content in jw.org, if you can go in there and read them without preconceptions, without special pleading, some of the stuff will surprise you as well. Because myself, even when I've gone into jw.org recently to do research for videos, because I'm looking at it without any preconceived notion that this is Jehovah's organization and therefore everything they say is going to be true, but actually reading it with an open mind, with the same sort of scrutiny that I would apply to anything, the things hit different. The things, they don't sound the way they used to say when I was in hook, line and sinker, or as much as I was anyway. So yeah, their own material can really show stuff as well. There is someone here on YouTube where that's kind of their approach completely, actually looking through Watchtower literature to point out things that don't make sense. I think his channel is King of Faders. I could be wrong, but I think it's King of Faders, and he makes videos based on Watchtower literature to show stuff that sounds bonkers in there. Okay, books. Let's talk about books. Not too much to say on here for this one. Now, this first one here, it's a bit of a controversial one, but this came sort of further along once I got to the point where I realized that I didn't believe the Bible was the inspired word of God anymore. That meant that I was open, I guess, to reading this. So this is the book by Christopher Hitchens, God is Not Great. I found that very insightful to look at the wider arguments as well, and start looking beyond myself, because we can be very selfish at times and think about ourselves, our experience, us, how things impact us, but then looking at the wider picture in terms of the history of Christianity and really think about them from a philosophical point of view. I found that very helpful. I'll have to admit, I was scared. I was scared to read the book. I don't know why, but I couldn't believe I was reading it. So I didn't buy it. I borrowed it from the library. But yeah, that was something. If you get a chance to read it, please do. I know the guy, he was like Marmite. You either hated him or you loved him. But hopefully what people can't deny is his eloquence in terms of speaking and wit. So Christopher Hitchens, God's Not Great. Another book that I've heard a lot of good things about, but I haven't actually read it, is Crisis of Conscience. I think this was written by Raymond Franz, who was a member of the governing body and then left. So as a witness, the governing body, that is the pinnacle of stuff, right? You get to see exactly, like you get to run the show, essentially. And so for someone who was a member of the governing body to decide to leave and then write a book, I would still like to read that. It's on my list. I just haven't gotten around to getting it yet. So Crisis of Conscience, I've heard a lot of good things about it. If you can get your hands on it, by all means read that. I think he is one of the people that left but kept a faith in God and still, stayed a Christian. And so if that's something that you're leaning towards in your research, then that might be a book that's more aligned to that way of thinking. And then finally, in terms of supportive communities. Now, first of all, I hope you find my channel supportive and a place where I don't want to say give hope, because that feels like thinking too much of it. But I hope that you find the videos encouraging, empowering, help you believe that there is life afterwards, and leaving doesn't have to mean the end of it. At least that's what I hope I'm showing here. But so I hope you find support here on this channel. There's a lot of groups out there on Facebook, on Reddit. I hear there are huge communities. I can't say I've engaged too much with Reddit. There's not enough hours in the day to get into stuff like that. A group that I am in, though, if you're ready for moving on, if you're ready for making the most of what you have left, if you're at that point, where you know that you want to leave, you want to move on. So it's a group on Facebook called Empowered Ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, or something along those lines. And it's a different vibe out there. It's a vibe of people that are seeing what's good in the world, what it is they can do versus what it is they can't do. Of course, people can share if they're having a hard day and tricky times. Like we recently had Mother's Day, and someone shared how they feel sad that this whole thing that everyone's celebrating their mother, they can't do that, and just reminiscing and acknowledging that loss of something that we're never going to experience. So yes, of course you can do that, but generally it's upbeat, it's moving forward tools to help you do that and stuff like that. So that was a group that I wanted to share. Those were some of the things that I used and resources that I looked at in the process of coming out the other end, and a lot of them I still refer to now. I want to hear, what are some resources, those of you that have already left? I know a lot of you left way before I did. Further along in your journey, what resources did you use in the process of leaving, or do you still use now, that you want to share with everyone that you think will be beneficial? Please share. It'd be good to know. Are there YouTube channels that you listen to that you really like? Let us know. Tell us why you like them as well and why they're beneficial. I think that's it. If you like the video and you haven't subscribed, why not? Tell me why. I know most people who watch are not subscribed. It's a funny thing because YouTube shows you what percentage of people who watch are subscribed versus not. So subscribe and share it so that more people can see it and more people can go on and live the life they want to live. Before I go, I'm going to put a video here, that you can go ahead and watch next, because why not, if you're going to sit around for a little bit. Okay, I will speak to you next week. Take care. Bye.